Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
One evening old Jack told us a story from his youth. The old mill of Zavo, he began, still stands near the Paprikani Lake. It's a dark building by the water. The 6 big wheels are turned by strong streams of water that rush through the mill race and surround the house, flowing through the cracks. The whole building shakes because of the constant sound of the water. It's like that even today, just as it was back when I used to explore those parts a long time ago. I remember a night that felt like it came from a fairy tale, full of the silver light of the moon, a night only young people could truly understand and feel. It was July. I was walking by the lake alone with my gun on my shoulder. Groups of ducks flying above the tall grass tempted me to follow them. I watched as they flew quickly through the clear air, getting smaller until they disappeared in the pink clouds of the setting sun. I passed by the waterfall where the water splashes down and walked between the thick willow trees that lined the narrow path to the mill. The green stream flowed swiftly through the mill race, and the water bubbled around the dark building. In the yard, the oxen rested beside the wagon. The old man, the miller and great-grandson of Zavo, came down from the mill bridge with his pipe in his mouth. In the loud noise of the water and the creaking of the wheels, men stood quietly amidst the bright mist that filled the old building. "A good health to you, my old friend Simeone." "Thank you, sir." "How's the flour coming along?" "Making good flour?" The old man always asked this. Was the country making good flour? "It's good, my old friend Simeone." "Thank God," said the old man. But how are you, sir?" "You never visit us." "The ducks bothering you?" Yes, they bother me. I plan to wait by the bank tonight. Maybe I'll get lucky." Good, I hope so too." "Look, Zamfira will guide you." Just then, the miller's niece appeared. She was a strange 16-year-old girl, not very tall, but with strong muscles. Her cheeks were sunburnt, and she had 2 gray eyes, so restless and unusual, shining with beauty and brilliance unlike any I've seen since. Her features weren't regular, but her gray eyes beneath her thick, arched brows gave her a unique and radiant beauty. When the old man spoke, she suddenly stopped and said quickly with twinkling eyes, "I don't want to show him the way." "Why not?" I asked, surprised, while the old man smiled. "Because I don't want to," said Zamfira, looking at me sideways. Okay," said the old man calmly, "then don't take him." The girl looked at me carefully, her eyes half closed, and then exclaimed sharply, I'll take him, after all." Old Simeone chuckled softly, turned around, and walked back to the mill bridge, but Zamfira stayed in front of me, standing tall with her hands by her sides. Her head was bent down, but her gray eyes sparkled beneath her eyebrows. She didn't wear anything on her head, and her chestnut hair was smoothly tied into a thick braid at the back of her neck. A beautiful white water lily was pinned among her hair. Underneath her white shirt, her chest rose and fell, and a blue skirt fell down to her ankles. Suddenly, she lifted her head and looked shyly at me as she smiled. Her teeth sparkled between her thin lips. Then, with her eyes, she signaled to me, come." I followed her. She moved quickly. Her strong body was clearly visible beneath her light clothes. Sometimes, she turned her head and her teeth gleamed. She untied the boat, hopped in, and said shortly, follow me."
Once I was seated, she pushed the long pole into the water and started rowing. For a while, we floated through tall grass and over big patches of plants. When we reached the open water, she put down the pole and began rowing with oars. The boat cut through the deep water, which glowed in the light of the setting sun. The oars made a soft, musical sound as they splashed. The girl's whole body moved gracefully as she rowed. The silver lily in her thick chestnut hair trembled. The lake was quiet. Water lilies sparkled in the golden sunset. The grass rustled gently. Dragonflies flew by like quick flashes of blue in the light. Suddenly, the girl turned her unusual gray eyes towards me. So tonight you'll wait for the duck? She asked. Yes, I'll wait, I replied. Good. Her voice sounded musical and soft. I asked her, does that seem strange to you? No, she said, turning her head away. But aren't you scared? Why should I be scared? Of the fairy of the lake, she said firmly. The water lady? Who's that? What? You don't know? The fairy of the lake. She looked closely at my face.
The sun was almost gone, the lake water turned dark. A heron flew above us, barely flapping its wings. Its cries made the reeds rustle sadly. The girl looked at me, and her smile was strangely beautiful. Her face seemed to reflect the green water's color. I can't explain how I felt. Her charm was amazing. In that place between the sky and the water, she was like the fairy of the lake. The boat hit a cave wall and stopped. We're here, said the girl. I stepped onto land slowly. But her charm made me dizzy. I turned quickly, took her face in my hands, and tried to kiss her eyes where the lake's secret seemed hidden. She gracefully resisted with little laughs, and instead of kissing her eyes, I touched her lips, which felt hot like fire. She pulled away, her strange eyes looking through me, and the boat sped away into the reeds. The lake was quiet, and only the soft sound of distant oars broke the silence. I made a bed of reeds in the cave, spread out my cloak, checked my gun, and while I waited for the duck, I thought deeply. How strange! I knew she was just Zamfira, the miller's niece, a simple girl with a sunburnt face. But her eyes and laughter intoxicated me, like the strong scent of a wildflower. As the twilight grew darker, she seemed like a dream floating on the lake among the water lilies. I was startled by the fast flapping of wings. I jumped up. A group of ducks flew over me. This got my attention. I aimed my gun carefully and cocked it. In the reeds, torn by the duck's wings, other birds called out to each other. A gentle breeze moved through the reeds. I shot a few times. The gun made a deep noise that echoed over the water. 1 or 2 ducks fell into the lake with heavy splashes, disturbing the water. It was too dark to see the ducks clearly. I could only hear the sound of their wings, like a quick breeze. The breeze calmed down and the lake became still. Only big black birds flew overhead, calling loudly. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I heard the deep, sad call of a bird called a bittern. Stars twinkled above, and the moon wouldn't rise for another hour. I wrapped myself in my cloak and thought about those gray eyes. In the deepening silence, I heard the distant noise of the mill and the weir. Somewhere, a dog barked in the distance. On a hill, a bright flame could be seen. Her graceful body, her eyes, and her laughter, along with the lily in her hair, intrigued me. She wasn't just a simple girl anymore, kissed by the sun and touched by the wind. Every movement, every glance, was special. And also strange. I had never seen her when I went to the mill. I had heard about the old man's naughty niece, but I hadn't seen her myself. But now, I remembered something. Once, I saw a pair of restless eyes peeking at me through a hole in the mill bridge. Those eyes must have been hers. They sparkled and seemed joyful. In the dark night, that passionate kiss lingered in my mind, and I waited for something I couldn't understand. I dozed off dreaming of those gray eyes. I'm not sure, I might have fallen asleep. I woke up in the bright moonlight flooding the air and the lake with its silver light. The water sparkled, the night was quiet, and the mill was silent. In the distance, I could hear the weir murmuring softly, like in a dream. Every now and then, the water formed circles that looked like colorful stones. Groups of ducks bathed in the moonlight. I touched my gun. I looked up, ready to shoot, when I stopped. A sweet song, barely understandable, drifted from the lake. It was a simple and repetitive song, but its distant sound, echoing over the water in the clear moonlight, made it charming. I immediately thought of the Lady of the Lake. I put my gun down and listened. It was a simple and beautiful melody. It stopped after a while, but I kept listening, hoping for something to happen. After a while, I heard the soft splashing of oars. I looked around, but I couldn't see where it was coming from. Then, suddenly, in the darkness of the rushes, a boat floated into the light with the girl lying down in the silver moonbeams. The lily in her dark hair glowed. I can't describe how I felt. It was too much to put into words, and I was young then. It's been 50 years since that time. I stood there, amazed, staring like I was under a spell. Truly, she was the fairy of the lake. Suddenly, the boat turned, and the oars made bright ripples in the water. It was heading towards my cave. She came quickly, her eyes shining like stars. But as she got closer, she let the boat glide again. Then, she turned quickly, laughing as she passed by the cave, a laugh like silver bells, which I still remember to this day, even though it's been so long. She passed by like a ghost, laughing, her eyes shining like stars. To my right, she stood up and threw something towards me. Then she sat back down, rowed away, and disappeared into the open lake. She vanished. All I could hear was the gentle sound of the oars. Then even that stopped and the lake was silent. Beside me, I found a bunch of carnations and sweet basil, symbols of love. At sunrise, the old man came to pick me up. As I looked back at the yard, I nodded towards the old black building. Eyes watched me through a hole in the mill bridge. That day I left. Many times, I've wanted to go back to the old Zava mill, but fate didn't let me. Other loves kept me in other places. Years went by, but the bunch of dried carnations and basil reminds me of everything. And sometimes, I think about the fairy of the lake.